This course is going to change your life if you love black and white photographs, because I'm going to show you 10 different ways to convert your color images to black and white. Each method has its own special properties, so after you learn all of them, you'll know which ones will work best with which images. But first, I need to make sure I cover relative value and explain how the colors in your image directly affect the gray of your black and white conversion. For instance, under normal photography conditions, like if you were to shoot a red rose against green leaves with regular film, the red rose and the green leaves would translate to the exact same shade of gray. And Photoshop does this with one of its black and white conversion methods. So I'm going to show you how to control the colors in the black and white conversion method so that you can have local subject contrast. So you can make that red rose white against black leaves, or you can make that red rose black against white leaves. There's so much power in learning how to do black and white conversions, and I'm going to show you everything from the easiest to the most difficult. And of course, as always, if you have a specific technique in mind that you want to watch, just take a peek in the description below, much like what's written right here beside me, and you have quick links to go to each individual video for the 10 separate methods. And above all, I'm going to be showing you how to do these things manually, but I'm also going to cover over and over and over the best keyboard shortcuts for all these techniques that will speed up your workflows 1000%. I do it with these flashcards that just pop up on screen. This is going to be a great course. And of course, there's some funny bloopers if you make it to the end of the video. I'm going to start with the grayscale mode change, and then I'm going to talk about how you can desaturate an image. Then we're going to cover gradient maps and the power that they have. And then, of course, we're going to talk about black and white adjustment layers, because that's the most common way of converting an image to black and white. And then let's not overlook Adobe Camera Raw for black and white conversion. Bang, bang, baby. It's a new day. And then, of course, some of the old school color channel copies and channel mixers. And then we'll move right to calculations, which is a little complicated. And from there, we'll go to the film and filter method. And then, of course, we're going to do an advanced multi-combo of a couple of advanced techniques, which I think are going to really benefit you.
Yes! That's awesome! What?
We know that light and shadow are what defines form, but in a color to grayscale conversion process, color really dictates how that grayscale conversion happens. Let's take a look at these three light circles, remembering that red, green, blue are what makes white light. So if I were to select the red layer and move this up, select the blue layer, move it over. So these are perfectly 255 in their individual color channels. Notice how the red layer is 255.00, the green is 0.2550, and the blue is 0.0255. Because 255 in all three color channels means pure white. 255 in one color channel while the others are all zero means you have a pure luminosity value of that one color. That's why if you were to put a red, green, blue filter over three flashlights and overlap them, where they overlap would make the secondary colors. Noticing that red and green make yellow, green and blue make cyan, and red and blue make magenta, and where all three overlap, you have pure white. Notice it's 255 in every single color channel. But here's what's interesting. I'll add a hue and saturation adjustment later and just desaturate it. Now granted, this typically is not going to happen in the real world because you rarely have a perfect isolation of 100% luminosity in only one color channel. But it kind of shows you the problem, right? All the colors converted to the same shade of gray. And this would happen with a rose. The red leaves and the green leaves would convert to pretty much the same shade of gray. Colors directly affect black and white conversions. So let's talk about relative value. So you can do this experiment yourself. What I'll do is I'll start with a normal white document. I will click on my gradient tool, make sure it's on linear gradient, make sure my default colors are black to white, and I'll hold down the shift key so I'll only draw a straight line, a perfect straight line, and I'll stop just a little bit from the edge. So now I have a nice gradient. What I'll do is I'll add a blank layer on top. I'll come over and choose the marquee tool. And again, if you're being quick, the shortcut is the letter M. Hit the letter M, and then I'm going to draw by holding down the shift key so that it keeps it a perfect square, make a perfect square, and I'm going to hit shift delete to open up the fill dialog box. I'm going to fill it with 50% gray, and then I'm going to hit command or control J to jump that to its own layer as well. I'll hit V for the move tool. Now watch as I click with the move tool, holding the shift key so it drags in a perfectly straight line. Watch how the value of the gray appears to change. I mean, we know it's the identical 50% gray, 128 in all the color channels. But notice the further I get to the white area, Our eyes lie to us. The same 50% gray square over the white area looks visually darker, and the light square, which we know isn't a light square, the identical color value looks lighter. Look in the info palette real quick, pull it out so I can see what's going on. See, that's still 128. This is still 255. This gray square is still 128. And over here we have 0. And notice as I come across how the RGB values systematically change at a 1 pixel value as I drag across, right? All the way to 255. This is relative value.
So without further ado, what do you say we get to it?
Are you ready? It's Photoshop time, and you know the drill. Smack it, whack it, and crack-a-lack it.
Yes!
There are a lot of ways to convert a color image to black and white. I wanted to cover some of the benefits and drawbacks of the grayscale mode change. And essentially, with a color image, if you take a look in your channels panel, you'll see that you have a combined RGB channel working towards color to black and white conversions, and you want to check out your channels to figure out if one of the color channels would give you some good options. The default is showing them to you in red, green, and blue overlays, when really you just want to see the black and white tonal information. You have a few options of how to set this. If you're on a Mac, just go up to the word Photoshop in the top menu bar, and then down to Preferences, and then over to Interface. If you're on a Windows machine, just go to the Edit menu at the top, go all the way down to Preferences, and then choose Interface. You can also hit Command or Control K and then choose Interface. So once you're here, just uncheck Show Channels in Color. Click OK, and it's a sticky setting, so it will stay for the remainder of the time that you have Photoshop installed on your machine. And so now we can quickly check to see which one we liked better. So there's blue, there's green, and here's red.
Yes!
And then you have your individual red, green, and blue channels, remembering that digital cameras capture and make images based on red, green, and blue light only. To convert this to the grayscale mode, you would go over to Image Mode, and then you change it from most likely RGB color to grayscale. Now look over there to the right and watch the channels panel. When I click that, it says, do you want to discard the color information? And we're going to say yes, discard it. And notice what happened. It threw away 2/3 of our information and left us just with the one gray channel. Now, there's some benefits to this. It is fast and it's easy. And if you're at the tail end of your black and white conversion using all the more complicated techniques for the ultimate control, this is a good way to output your final image and make it, 2/3 smaller. Another interesting thing about the grayscale mode change is that Photoshop examines every pixel and takes 59% of the green channel, 30% of the red channel, and only 11% of the blue channel. This ratio is based on the average color responsiveness of the human eye, and it closely simulates the tonal look of plus X film.
Yes!
When converting a color image to black and white, the most popular way to do it is to desaturate it. There's a few ways to get there. You can go up to Image, down to Adjustments, and all the way down to Desaturate right here. I'm going to click that. Now, the problem with Desaturate is that it's a one-size-fits-all because it removes all the color info by equalizing the color pixel info to equivalent values, totally ignoring how the eye responds to color. Look at the channels panel. See the difference? Right, there is no difference. There's the red channel, there's the green channel, the blue channel. Notice this image did not change at all. Now, if I hit Command or Control Z to undo that desaturate, and we start with the red, green, blue compressed overlay, but if I click on the red channel, we see how that channel is responding to the luminosity of the colors. Here's the green channel, here's the blue channel. So you obviously see we can quickly do some different compositing to take the benefits of whatever layers we like the most. But let's show you how to do it another way. You can come up to Image, go to Adjustments, and then down to Hue and Saturation right here. Now, the thing is, when you choose these are all destructive. Anything you're choosing from this image menu command is destructive. I'll show you a way to do non-destructive in just a moment. Grab the saturation slider and just drag it to -100. And it's literally going to do the same thing. Hit OK, go back to channels. See, it's mathematically, this is the exact same function. Command or Control Z. Another way to do this quickly is just to hit the Command Shift U, and it's the shortcut that basically opens up a hue saturation dialog box and drags the saturation down to -100. Command or Control Z. The least destructive way to do it is to always use your adjustment layer icons, which are located right here, and you can actually find them all the way at the bottom as well. You'll see a little chocolate and white cookie, and it has all the same things as above. So it just depends whether you pop open a dialog list and then find the hue saturation, or you just go click on the icon right up here. And the interesting thing is, if you hover over
these icons, they'll tell you what they are. It gives you a quick pop-up that's highlighted there, but it also, notice right here, it tells you whatever you're hovering over immediately. So it doesn't take very long to learn. And this is the hue saturation adjustment layer. I'll click it and I'm doing the same exact thing, except now it's non-destructive. So I can come back and change my mind. I can use it as a blend mode reference, which is probably the two main reasons I would use Desaturate, is just if I want to see what the quick conversion would look like what does Photoshop think this would look like as a grayscale. Another reason I would use it is if I just want to use a quick black and white with a blend mode to affect an image. Like if I needed to make it darker, but I didn't want to affect the colors, I could come in and just add a hue saturation adjustment, desaturate it, and I could go to multiply, and it's going to overall make the color image underneath darker. Or if I wanted to give it more contrast, I could come down to overlay or soft light. And let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to choose soft light. I'm going to turn that eyeball off. I'm going to go back to my main layer and hit Command or Control J, and then I'm going to choose the same soft light. So here's this one, right? And then here's this one. Do you see that there's a difference there? So just duplicating the layer and choosing soft light doubles up the color saturation and contrast as well. But if you just have a quick black and white and you just needed a subtle contrast adjustment, that's one of my primary uses for that particular black and white adjustment. The reason for it is it's quick, but it offers you no control, and you still have the same file size because you still have all three layers. Let me activate that again so you can see it. Delete. So I hit Command Shift U. And again, this is the reason I don't like it. You have no control over your individual color channel. So all you can do really is adjust contrast, hand dodging and burning, that kind of thing.
Yes!
Using the gradient map adjustment layer is a great way to convert quickly a color image to black and white. Let me show you how you do that. So remember, you can access any of these controls from the top menu bar, image adjustments, and then you can go down to gradient map. But remember, all of these essentially are destructive edits, meaning we can't fix them later. So we're going to work in a non-destructive workflow. Gives you all the same controls, but it applies everything as an adjustment layer for masking, adjustments, blend modes, just a lot more creative options. So I'm going to come over here to the adjustments panel. So essentially I'm going to come all the way over to this one, which is the gradient map icon. I'm going to click it. It instantly applies the gradient map, which is one of the quickest ways to convert to black and white. Now you still have some controls. You can access them by just clicking on this bar, this gradient bar, and that will launch the gradient editor. Now we have some a lot of special effect type things we can do, mapping from colors to colors if that's what we want to do. But this is black and white. So I'm going to go back to the basics, change it to foreground to background because my foreground over here is black, my background's white. That's perfect. So now I can click anywhere inside here, or I can come underneath and click on the bottom. So essentially what I just did is I added a new point and I said basically everything from these midtones to the left should be mapped to black. And that gives it a very dramatic edit. And then I can drag that back over if it's too strong, or if I didn't want it mapped that hard, all I have to do is click this color icon. And again, since this is black and white, I'm going to choose shades of gray. And I'll choose a mid-gray. I did pretty good. 126 all the way down. 128 is exactly mid-gray. And now I can drag that mid-tone slider. Do you see how I'm affecting the gradations from white to black and corresponding the image? So I can make it a little darker. I can make the overall image a little lighter. Or maybe I want to adjust the transitions from dark to mid-gray. So I grab this middle point and see how that did that. And now I can pull all of that over if I want to. Or I can change the transitions from the highlights to the midtones. So you have a lot of quick, powerful control that's non-destructive using your gradient editor and the gradient map. An image that has a gradient map applied and you want to add more contrast to it without going into the gradient editor, just add a levels or adjustments layer and increase your contrast the ways you know how by just pulling in the black and the white sliders and adjusting it to taste.
Yes!
One of the methods that gives you best control over your color to black and white conversions is just by adding a black and white adjustment layer. Essentially, it's going to convert it to black and white, but it's going to give you the color channel sliders plus additional colors with which to drag and change just the luminosity value of the hidden color. So we know the background was red, right? Turn off that eyeball. So the background's red. So if I grab the red slider and I want to make it darker to make the lizard pop out more, watch this. See how powerful that is and how quick? And the lizard we know is like a yellowy green. So if I want to make the yellows a little brighter or the green parts a little darker, make those also a little brighter. Now, some of these color sliders probably won't do much at all because there's not a lot of the specific colors in the image. But this is a really powerful way to adjust the tonality of your black and white image. So I'm going to delete that black and white adjustment layer because I want to show you, I want to do it one more time. I'll come up to the black and white adjustment layer icon, add it, and instead of dragging the sliders, like let's say I can't identify exactly the color that I'm looking at, which does happen because it's a mixture of different color channels, just click on this hand icon. And that's going to let you drag on based on what you click on. So as I come over here, see how that's a eyedropper? So if I click on this lighter gray area of the background, it converts to that hand tool. Now watch what happens over there in the properties panel. See how my red is being adjusted as I drag it to the left, it gets darker. If I drag it to the right, it gets lighter. So I can totally control the subject luminance contrast within my image. Holy moly, Batman. That is awesome. I know, right? Let's get back to the lecture. So I can totally control the subject luminance contrast within my image, which is really great for making your foreground or your subject pop out when you want it to be a little brighter or darker. And let's say I click here on the lizard, make just that part of the lizard brighter. So you see the power of the black and white adjustment layer.
Yes!
One of my most favorite color to black and white conversion methods is utilizing the Adobe Camera Raw interface, which is very similar to Lightroom as far as how they work. I don't want to manipulate my original image though, because as I'm doing it now, it will be a destructive edit, as in once I apply it, it's kind of stuck, especially after I save the file. So I'm going to hit Command or Control J, which duplicated my image. So now I have two. And I'm going to go up to Filter, and I'm going to choose Camera Raw Filter. Bam! Adobe Camera Raw is awesome.
So once Camera Raw is opened, I now have some pretty dramatic controls over a black and white conversion. There are a lot of ways I could approach this. So first I'm going to come up to Edit and over to the black and white button. I'm going to click it, and it's going to automatically convert to black and white, most likely adjusting the way our eyes would see it. But if I click Auto, what's going to happen is it's going to take the artificial intelligence and it's going to figure out what the tonal comparison should be. So I'm just going to click that, and it's going to make a nice best guess. But I know I want total control. So I'm going to come down to the black and white mixer right down here at the bottom. See how that's called the color mixer, but it says the black and white mixer because when you've toggled it to black and white, you basically have the ability to adjust the luminosity of the individual colors. And you'll notice I have a few more options here. Like now I have an orange slider, which is really exciting. Now I can click auto in this area as well and let it make its best guess. And actually, I like the direction it's going. I actually wanted to take that background darker and pop the lizard out more. So we know that background was red, so I would just grab the red and bring it down. And now we have an orange slider. Let's see what that does. Now see, it gets rid of those lines, but notice I'm kind of getting this weird line around the lizard. So I don't want to do that. Maybe there's another way we can make these lines or this area just a little darker. The yellows, that's for the lizard itself. So we can make that lizard super bright, super dark. Oh, we might come back to that. Somewhere in there. And we know that I want to adjust the lizard's tonal range, make it a little bit more crispy looking. So I'm going to click back on the basic panel and I want to adjust the clarity, exposure, texture, dehaze, pull the exposure up a touch. See, I like the direction that's going. So after I've got it about where I want it, I'll click OK and go back to Photoshop. Now, once I'm in Photoshop, you see it basically loaded all that back to its own individual layer above this layer. And so what I could do real quick is I'd come over to the spot healing brush, left bracket key to make my brush smaller. And remember, when you single click and then hold the shift key and click again, it's going to draw a straight line. So I can get rid of these lines right here that I don't like. I can get rid of that one rivet and that one rivet. And there we go. I've quickly created a really dramatic image. And remember, there's a lot of photography ideas out there that you're supposed to have perfect detail in the shadow areas and perfect detail in the highlight areas. I totally disagree with that. As artists, you need to figure out what is important to your image. And for me, using a solid field of black or a solid field of white can really enhance the graphic and visual interest of an image. So I think it's important for you to decide what's appropriate for your specific image. I'd say we should pop back over to Adobe Camera Raw and we should create the inverse of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that off, come back to the background, hit Command or Control J to duplicate the layer. I'll go back up to filter and I'll come down to Camera Raw filter. That's going to pop us right back over to the Camera Raw filter. I'm going to convert it to black and white. And this time when I come down to the black and white mixer, I want to do the opposite. I want to make the background super bright, but I want to make the lizard super dark. And then let's come back up to the basic and tweak that some more. So this is all to taste, but you see the general direction. Then I can go back to that black and white mixer at any time and say, what else could I adjust here?
6.5 hours later.
And then go back and you're like, nope, I don't like that at all. So I'm just going to delete that. Command J it. I'm going to pop back over to Adobe Camera Raw. Okay, so I'm just going to click black and white, click auto, and make those reds a little brighter. Go ahead and go to the basic, clarity, a little dehaze, a little texture. Again, I'm going to pop back to that black and white and just make the oranges and reds just a little lighter. Just something like that. Somewhere in that range. I think that's a good normal balance. So now let's take this back over to Photoshop. I'll click OK. So now I have two, and I can mix them and merge them either by lowering the opacity of the top layer. I can change the order of them by clicking and dragging, seeing that cyan line up here, and I can convert this back to 100%. Click on this layer and drag it down to 70%, maybe 30%. So I have, look at all the control that I have. Now I have the rivets. I still have my subject to background difference, but I'm not using pure black as a graphic element, just more darker tones. So you really do have total creative control over your images. And again, this is using the Adobe Camera Raw conversion method. Bam! Adobe Camera Raw is awesome. Another method of color to black and white conversions happens by utilizing your individual color channels. So I'll click on the channels panel right here and notice the difference between, if I click on that icon, see that's what the red color channel is giving me in terms of black and white luminosities. Here's the green and here's the blue. They all react differently to the light, and we want to capture all of them. So when you go to your channels panel, if your red, green, and blue channels aren't showing up in tonalities of gray from white to black, then you need to shift that because the Photoshop default comes in showing the red, green overlays. To fix it, if you're on a Windows machine, you go up to Edit, and all the way down at the bottom, you'll see Preferences. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to choose Photoshop and choose Preferences. And for either, go to Interface. And right here, this is how yours looks if you have red, green, and blue overlays. All you have to do is uncheck that, click OK. It's a sticky setting, so to stay until you change it again.
Nice.
So I'll start with the red. I'll select that. See how it has, it's the only one with the eyeball. It's the one most selected. I'll hit Command or Control A, Command or Control C. Essentially, I just select it all and then copied. I'll go back to my layers panel. I will add a new layer, which will be empty, and hit Command or Control V, which will load it. I'll double click on that and say red. So that way I'll remember what it is in case I forget. Now here's what's interesting. I want to go back and copy and paste the green and blue channels, but watch what happens when I click on that channels. Everything is identical. So I've got to go back to layers and make sure that eyeball is toggled off for the red layer and go back to the original color background layer. Then click on channels. See, now I see everything and I can click on just the green channel, hit Command or Control A, Command or Control C, come back to layers, add a new layer, hit Command or Control V to paste it, and double click on the name, green, repeat the process, turn off the eyeball, go back to my background layer, choose channels, choose blue, Command or Control A, Command or Control C, go back to layers, add a new blank layer, Command or Control V to paste, double click layer 1 and rename it blue. So I've quickly created all of the individual color channels and I've got them into my layers panel where I can now manipulate them and use them to my benefit, for however I want to mask or use blend modes to create a really interesting black and white image based on compositing all of the color channels at my discretion. Wait, there's a bonus tip. Now let me show you how would you export these without, I mean, if I said, hey, all of these red, green, and blue layers as individual files to compare side by side or something. Well, essentially, if your first thought is, well, I guess I would, make this is the red, so I'd hit Command Shift S to do a save as command, and then I name it red, and then click save, and then I would turn this eyeball off. Command Shift S to do another save as, and then name this one green, and then turn that off, and then Command Shift S, name this one blue. Yes, you can do it that way, but you notice how repetitive that is. Photoshop has so many powerful automated features for you. So to quickly export all these layers to files without that repetitive save as per layer procedure, let Photoshop do the work for you. Just click on that lock icon to toggle it off, and I will rename this one original. All you do is go up to File, Export, Layers to Files.
Nice.
Then it's going to ask, where do you want to save it? So I'm going to hit Browse. I'm going to save it here. I'm going to add a new folder, Project 1, Create. So now that folder's ready to go. Do I want this prefix? Like, this is going to give the entire name of that original JPEG in front of whatever the layer name is. So it would say all of this, and then it would say -red. I don't want visible layers only. So everything that I have toggled on, include the ICC profile, JPEG quality of 12, hit run, and it's done. So I'd go back to Bridge. There's my project 1. And now look, I have a chronological red, green, blue, and original. So I have access to these files with a quick export layers to files. Hope that helps.
Yes!
Another popular way of converting a color image to black and white is using the channel mixer. So I will choose that, and I will apply it as an adjustment layer, coming up to this icon, and it applies the channel mixer layer and opens up the properties panel. Now, essentially, I'm just going to check monochrome, and it's going to give me default values of 40, 40, and 20. Essentially, the rule of thumb is you want these 3 color channels to add up to 100%, depending on how you want to drag and change them. Because as you drag and change them, the percentages will shift, right? And it tells you right here, like, okay, you need 47 more somewhere. So figure out where you need that, and essentially see how it keeps a running total of 100%, so that it does the math for you. So that part is nice. But one of the things that's my favorite, do you remember the grayscale mode change? How it had pretty good advantage of being super quick. The disadvantage was that it threw away 2/3 of your image file and allowed you no further control. But one of the benefits is it gave you a very specific red, green, and blue color ratio that was based on the average color responsiveness of the human eye, and it actually closely simulated the tonal range of +X film. Now, I shot +X film for about 15 years, so I really love it. So here in channel mixers where I would use that. So essentially the red channel, it should be 30%. I'm just selecting it and typing. The green should be 59% because our eyes are more sensitive to green light, which is why in your digital cameras, if you're using one with a bare pattern, for every pixel site, you have 2 green receptors and a red and blue receptor. So you have double the green receptors in your cameras. And then blue is 11%. That totals 100. So again, that's red 30, green 59, blue 11. You don't have to do this for you. I just like this particular look, and then I'll maybe tweak it just a little bit if I see something that I want to increase. I want to make the red's a little darker, the green's a little lighter, and I really enjoy that mixture for channel mix. Wait. There's a bonus tip. Same thing with the channel mixer. Once you have the channel mixture to where you want it to be, wherever that may be, you can always increase the contrast just by adding a levels or a curves adjustment layer up here in this panel. I'll use levels, and I'll increase the contrast the ways that I've already learned, and just save that out.
Yes!
In this video, I'm going to cover the black and white conversion method 8, which is called calculations. And we're going to make this image look like this one, or maybe this one. Are you ready? It's Photoshop time, and you know the drill. Smack it, whack it, and crack-a-lack it. So, I've opened this image in Photoshop, and the quickest way to apply calculations, which I think is a really good thought exercise if you need some ideas, go up to Image and down to Calculations. This may be one of those dialog boxes that when it pops up, you're like, oh, I'm out of here. So right away, I want you to go directly to the bottom, and if it's not already chosen, and it's probably not, I think the default is New Channel, check New Document, because essentially we're going to create a new document by merging 2 different color channels, and we have the ability to to control the blending mode of that merging. We have the ability to merge two identical color channels into each other. We can invert them. We have a lot of creative control. So if there are multiple layers in the document, then set the layer to merged. I don't have multiple layers in this document, so it automatically has chosen the background layer, which is perfect because that's what it should be on anyway if there's no other layer. The most important controls are the two channel drop-down menus. These enable you to choose the channels that the calculation merges into its black and white output document. For instance, I can pick red in one drop-down box, and it's going to show lighter skin tones, especially if I blend it with another red. You see how that's lighter skin tones and made pretty much everything that had red in it much lighter? Now, as you know, I could choose blue, and blue is going to make for darker skin tones. And then you can experiment with the blending drop-down box and the opacity of this blend that basically varies the ratio of channel values that will get you crazy amount of options fairly quick. And then whenever you're ready, just click OK. And then Photoshop's going to send the combined monochromatic image to a new document. I think I would want green, and I would blend it with red. I think that'd give nice color tones to his face. I lost this area over here. Now remember, you can still invert if you wanted to. If you want to go for more of a solarized look, and you convert either color channel, or you can invert both color channels, and it's everything totally changes. I could go to screen blend mode, and you see how overlay for more contrast, and then I could uninvert the one, I could uninvert the other. You just get so many different looks depending on what it is that you want to do. So if I blend this with green and blue, I'm gonna go back up here and choose red to blue. I think I like that one the best for his skin tone. I'm just looking at the subject. I basically just want to separate the subject and the building. I want to make them both as interesting as possible. And I'm going to click OK. And notice up here it opened as an untitled 3 document. Just so you know, this is going to open as a multi-channel document in the mode. So you can go up to image mode and you see what's happening. It's very much like lab color, as in I don't have any ability to choose RGB or CMYK yet. I've lost a few of my image adjustments, just like in lab. I don't have any of these adjustment layers over here to use. It's an older process, but there are some workarounds. So I'm gonna go back to the original image. I'm gonna choose image calculations, and this time I'm looking predominantly at the building. This is a red brick building, so if I want a lot of detail in the building, I think I'd probably choose that. Make sure my result is out to a new document. So here's the thing. If I want to drag this new untitled document over to this one, pull it down, drop it in, it's going to give me a warning. Could not duplicate the layer because the source document is in multi-channel mode. That's right. So essentially for both of these, I need to go to image mode. Now I've got to go to grayscale. I've got to go right back, image mode. Now I can choose RGB color, which unlocks all of my adjustment layers. I've got to go to the one I want to copy from and repeat the process. So again, there's some creative visual opportunities for this particular method, but it's fairly long and convoluted. Okay, now I'm going to grab this layer, pull it over to the tab I want it to go in. And if I hold the shift key, this is going work great since there are 2 identical images. It'll automatically center the image, which basically means it's going to drop it in perfect registration. Do you see that? I like the building in this one, so I'm going to add a layer mask onto that one. Black is already in my foreground. My brush is already chosen. My opacity, look up there, is at 50%. So I'm just going to tap a little bit to pull back some of the information here. And then if I wanted, I'll hit X to swap my foreground background colors, and I'll just pull back any detail that was here. Now, after I've done that, compress everything or merge everything I've done to the very top layer, Command Option Shift letter E, and I'm gonna hit Command J just to duplicate that so that I now have an original compressed layer, and then I have a duplicated compressed layer so that when I inevitably will go back over to filter, Camera Raw filter, if I go too far, it leaves me the ability to lower the opacity or change the blend modes to get an even more interesting effect. So I'm in the basic edit panel. This is a good image to bump up the clarity and I get some dehaze going. I'm gonna close down the detail, close down the black and white mixer, close down the geometry. Here's the effects, probably pulling subtle vignette. And then make sure I'm not pulling out, there we go. Pull back some of those highlights that I might have been missing, click OK. So yeah, I think this definitely has a pretty powerful look. I'm pretty sure I'd want to make the person a little lighter. So what I'll do is I'll just add a blank layer and I'm gonna choose soft light. Now the old days, we would fill this with gray and then choose soft light, which makes it disappear. Now you don't have to actually do that. Just hit B with a brush. I want white in my foreground, so I'll choose white. I'm at 50% opacity, right bracket my brush bigger. I'm gonna tap once, just like a little spotlight on him. One more tap. Okay, that last tap was a little strong, so I'd go up to edit, fade brush tool. You can always come up to edit and it will fade the very last thing you did. So I can fade it, I can change the blend mode of it. I just want to pull down the intensity of that last, but there we go. And then I was like, well, maybe I do want to brighten up. This door looks a little muddy. You see the power you have? Left bracket key. Maybe I want to make right in here just a touch brighter. Now, after you've done all this, you can leave it at this point. You can go up to some kind of color toning method. I just am a sucker for this old technique of hue and saturation adjustment layer, dragging the hue over to a nice warm sepia, pulling the saturation down, and then pulling the lightness up just a touch. I just really love that look, but you can do whatever you want. I can't wait to see what you do.
Yes!
So in this video, I'm going to show you the black and white conversion method number 9, and it's called the film and filter method, or also known as the twin hue and saturation method. It's pretty much less intuitive than the channel mixer, and it usually produces a lower contrast image, but this is easily fixed with levels or a curves adjustment, and it does have some pretty unique visualization powers of how the color, the hue, affects the different black and white conversions, and you see them all super quick. So let's go through the process.
Yes! That's awesome! What?
Essentially, you're just going to add a hue saturation adjustment layer. You're going to drag the saturation down to -100, and you're going to name this layer Film or Convert to Gray. So double click there. Then you're going to reselect the background layer, and you're going to add an additional hue saturation layer. And you're going to name this one Filter, and you're going to change the blend mode, the layer blend modes, down to color. Now, if you're not, you should be, but if you're not, make sure you're on this filter layer icon so that you can see the hue saturation adjustments up here in the properties panel. And basically, you're just going to adjust the hue slider until you get something you like, and you can always tweak the saturation and lightness sliders at any time. So do you see how you have a lot of power over the conversion of this? And then to get even more control, you can go into the individual color channels, leaving the master. This had a lot of red yellows in it, so I'll go to red and I'll see how I can twist and push very quickly. Go to yellows. Yeah, I feel like something like there is really nice. And as you notice, it does have a little bit of a lower contrast that's just inherent in this method, but that's okay. Just go up to your levels or curves adjustment layer. I'm going to choose the black point eyedropper, and this looks like it should be black. Maybe I want everything here and below to be black. Okay, I like where that's going. And notice how it chose mostly the blue channel to do that in. Remember, you can always add your own point to the curve. It's like, well, I want the midtones to be a little brighter, but I do want contrast, so I'll pull the mid shadow tones down, which gives me this nice subtle S curve. And remember, if at any time you want to solarize an image, oh, before I solarize it, do you notice the posterization that's happening over here? That kind of is a bad side effect of this particular conversion method. So you always have to watch out for that. Typically, you're going to see it in the skies before anything else. To solarize something, just invert the curve, and it kind of reverses everything, and it reverses the tones in a way that looks like a solarization technique. And if at any time you want to undo that, you can just grab a point and drag them off. Okay, we're back to where we were. So now I can just put in that little subtle curve. And remember, you always have the ability to go into the presets. It's like, yeah, I'd like something maybe with more of a linear contrast. Well, that's pretty flat. So maybe cross process this. Well, maybe I don't want that. Do I want a negative look? No, I think I'll just go with strong contrast, which is very similar to what we did. I think we had ours up just a little more. Anyway, this is the film and filter or twin hue saturation black and white conversion method.
Yes!
In this video, I'm covering the black and white conversion method 10, which is basically an advanced conversion technique, which there could be 100 different iterations of. I'm just basically combining a couple of techniques you've already learned and showing you how you can manipulate them to get a different black and white conversion than just using them individually.
Yes! That's awesome! What?
So once you have your image open and everything's either compressed and merged to the top layer or it's totally flattened, however you want to do it, you need to duplicate your image. Go up to Image and Duplicate. Remember, this is going to duplicate the image into its own file. You can rename it here. I'm just going to let this be the copy. Delete that one. Don't save. Command 0 to fill screen. And essentially, I want to convert this duplicated image to lab mode. So I'll do Image, Mode, Lab Color. Then we'll go to the Channels panel, select the lightness channel, which is all the white to black point data from this entire file. I'm gonna hit Command A for select all, Command C for copy all. I'm gonna toggle this image back open, go to layers, and I can either add a blank layer and then hit Command or Control V, or if I had just hit Command or Control V, it would have automatically added a new layer and pasted it inside. So remember which one this is. I'm gonna name this lightness. Now create 3 more layers. Here's the add layer icon. 1, 2, 3. Go to the top one. Double click on the layer 3 name, red, green, blue. Now I'm going to turn off the visibility of the lightness channel, and then I'm going to copy and paste each color channel into these corresponding layers. So you have to go to the channels to get them. But here's the interesting thing. Notice I can see the channels, right? So if I want to copy the red, Command A, Command C, I get this thing. It says could not complete the copy command because the selected area is empty. If you get this, know that you've actually got to be on the original color background layer to access the color channels and actually be able to do something with them. So now I'll come back to the channel, select red, Command A, Command C, come back to layers, select my red layer, Command V. Now I've got to go back and reselect that color background layer, go back to channels, select green, Command A, Command C, come back over here, select green, Command V, reselect the background layer, channels, blue, Command A, Command C, come back over, select the blue layer, Command V for paste. So now I have all of the benefits of all the color channels as layers that I can manipulate. Here's the red. I liked how that made the sky and the water darker. Here's the green, and then here's the blue. Actually, I think I like the way the trees and the houses look in the blue. And then again, we have our lightness channel down here, which is just all the black and white point data that we may need to fade back to. One conversion method that I like to do is I'll leave all of these on and I'll add a hide all layer mask. Remember, you do that by holding the Alt or Option key as you add a layer mask. That way it comes in as black. Remember, black conceals everything on this layer, so it's basically hiding everything on that layer. I'll select this layer, hold down the Alt or Option key, add another black mask, select the blue one, Alt or Option key while I add a layer mask, and that's another one. So essentially all I'm seeing is this lightness layer, right? Giving me a parameter of what a generic black and white conversion looks like. So now I can go customize it to taste. Remember up here on the red, if I need to see what this image looks like, just hold down the Shift key and click on the layer. It'll put a red X and basically cancel out that mask. Okay, so the red really made that sky dark and the water dark. I like that. So I'm going to tap B for the brush. I'm going to look at my foreground. Hopefully it's already white. If it's not, I can click this little icon right here. Look up at my tool menu. Notice I'm at normal at 100%, which is where I want to be. Right bracket key to make my brush bigger. And I'm just going to paint with 100%. Now see what's happening. It's making all of my stuff lighter. Well, that's because I'm on this blue layer, which made the sky lighter and made the buildings darker. So I'll hit Command Z to do that. All you have to do is just make sure you're on the right layer. So go up to the red layer, make sure the little white corners are around the black mask on the red layer, and then paint. And I'm painting at 100%, so I'm getting 100% of the effect. I like that. I know that I like the houses here in the blue, so I'll select the blue and I'll paint all the houses in. Okay, now looking at that, they're looking a tiny bit flat. So I think I'd like to come back to this blue. I'll tap X, left bracket key for smaller. And I was like, you know, this house would look a lot better lighter. And the red made it lighter, right? So if I hide what's on the blue layer, that means that white layer that's up above it is going to show. And then where else does it look a little muddy? Maybe this house could be lighter. Maybe this whole little area. Maybe this area. This area could be just a little lighter. You see how you have the ability to bring back exactly what it is that you want to see and control? And then after you've made all your adjustments to taste, I like to merge everything I've done into its own layer by hitting Command Option Shift letter E. Now I Command J that to duplicate it. So I can go over to Camera Raw, and Camera Raw processing engine is so powerful, and it has all these interactive visual-based sliders that make it very easy to make quick decisions. Like this would definitely be an image I would pull up the clarity and dehaze since it's kind of more of a landscape. I might open up the shadows a bit, but pull down the highlights to make sure I'm not blowing out anything. Maybe I would add a subtle vignette and bit of noise reduction. And I like where that is. I'll hit OK. So I can toggle, this is where I was, this is where I am now. And actually, I don't think I would blend back in. I think I would just make some obvious things like what bothers you about the image. For me, there's some distracting elements that need to be there. Obviously, these buoys are there for a purpose, but they don't need to be there for my photograph. So I would use a spot retouching brush, spot healing brush, and just tap out anything that was visually distracting that if I could remove it if I were on site and had the ability, I would. I like that black and white conversion. I had a lot of control over what twisted to where. Here's a good time to go add a color lookup table. I would click the color lookup table, go down to the 3D LUT file, hit the drop down. And this is a good one for maybe the edgy amber to get a more timeless look. And remember, as always, everything comes in at 100%, so you can lower the opacity to make it not quite as strong. I'll toggle that off. So now let's add an additional color adjustment layer by clicking on this. Go down to Futuristic Bleak. That has a nice look. I'll turn that eyeball off. I'll come up and add another color adjustment layer. And maybe I would try Horror Blue. Lower the opacity to taste. Actually, I kind of like that look. Turn that off. And I'll add another color adjustment lookup, because this one begs to be called Foggy Night. Yeah, how is that not simply awesome? Holy moly, Batman. That is awesome. I know, right? Let's get back to the lecture. If you ever need to, and you want to double the effect and then use blend modes to create a different effect, just hit Command or Control J on the adjustment layer. Obviously that looks horrible, but I know I want to brighten it. So I'll go up to my layer blend mode of screen and see how that gives it a nice kind of washed out look. And as always, I can lower the opacity of this just so it just affects it minimally. Anyway, I hope this has given you some really creative ideas of how to convert your own images to black and white and color and tone them to give the correct mood that you want to convey to dazzle all of us.
Blooper time. Blooper, 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 blooper. Blooperville. Yeah, I love some fucking bloopers. Okay, so we're going to convert. What's wrong with my arm? I think my arm's broken. So now you see that this part, why are my eyeballs looking straight up? That is so stupid. So now we're going to talk about black and white conversions. And I can't remember what I'm supposed to say. I need a script for this. I feel stupid when I do it without a script. I need another take. Hold on. Deep breathing. Frick. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. No, I'm not ready. Oh, my arm's broken again. Okay, focus. Focus. All you have to do is talk about Photoshop and not sound stupid. It's not hard. All right, let's get back to it. Did you get all that? I got it right from the get-go. Gecko. Get it? I said gecko instead of get-go because you talked about a lizard the whole time, which is really a chameleon. You kept calling it a lizard and then a chameleon. Okay, a chameleon is a type of lizard. And I chose chameleon because I was being clever, because they have the ability to change their colors. But I thought that would be kind of cool since we're converting colors to black and white. Man, you're an idiot. Nobody cares about that. This is not the nature channel. It's a Photoshop channel. I was going for subtlety. Nobody cares about your subtlety. Just focus on the tips. They really only want it in like 4 seconds, and you stretch this out to an hour. You're a loser. No, you're a loser. I'm you. Well, then you're a loser. Ha, you're calling yourself a loser. No, I'm not. I'm calling you a loser. The part of me that's a loser. This part of me right now is not a loser. You're the loser.
Yes!
Hey, what are you still doing here? It's over. Hey, if you like this video, it helps. You can help me. Smack it, whack it, and crack-a-lack it. Take care. I like subscribers.
That's awesome! Whoa! Yes! Oh my god, I did! This is...
Hey, you stayed to the end. You know what that means? You're awesome. I'm talking about you. Now get out of here.